Hey Opties! Today we're talking about the basics of angles. We have two main things to talk about. One is the size of angles, and the other is relationships of the sum of angles. And remember, sum just means to add. We've got 5 different types of sizes of angles. Those are acute, right, obtuse, straight, and reflex. So let's take a look at our table here. Let's start with acute, which is the smallest type of angle we're going to talk about. An acute angle is less than 90 degrees. You can also write this with these symbols here, a less than symbol, and then a 90, and then a little small circle in the top right-hand corner of 90. That is called a degree symbol. So you read that less than 90 degrees. So let's draw a picture. Remember that an angle is made up of 2 rays. And remember that a ray starts with a point and continues with an arrow. So it's like a one-sided line. So if you have 2 rays and they come together and their points meet up right here, this point is called the vertex of the angle, and each ray is a side of the angle. So an acute angle is less than 90 degrees, so it's less than a corner. It's somewhere in here. So let's draw that. We've got our arrows to represent those rays, and our point, which are the 2 points of the rays coming together, and that's called the vertex of the angle. One more thing. You'll often see a little curved marking on angles to show the part that's going to be measured, and that's just called an arc mark or an angle marking. Next we have right angle. You'll see me use this symbol to represent right angle a lot of times because it's just an easy visual representation. You think about this is a corner. So a right angle is exactly 90 degrees. Think about the corner of a piece of paper, or the corner of a rectangular picture frame, or the corner of your computer screen, or your phone. And we have the symbols equals 90 degrees. A lot of times you'll see a vertical line right on a horizontal line, like so, to represent your 90 degrees. But it doesn't always have to be that way. You could have your 90 degrees tilted like this, and that will be okay too. It's just typically seen as this. There is a specific type of angle marking we use for right angles. It's not a curved mark, it's like a mini box in the corner, like this. So anytime you see that box on a picture of an angle, you know that that means the angle is a right angle or 90 degrees. You don't even have to have it written in words told to you in the problem as given information to know it's 90 degrees. You simply just have to have that in the picture. But if you do have an angle that tells you that it's 90 degrees but doesn't have the box, that's okay too. You could just draw in your little box to represent that information. Next we have obtuse. There's 2 different ways to say the size of the angle for obtuse, but they mean the same thing. One of them is greater than 90 and less than 180 degrees. So bigger than a corner, but not quite a straight line, which is 180 degrees. You can also say this is between 90 and 180 degrees. Means the same thing, 2 different ways of saying it. So whatever helps you remember, think about it that way. So to draw an obtuse angle, we're just going to open up our angle a little bit more than a 90 degree. So more than a corner, but not quite making a straight line. Here's our vertex. Here's our angle marking. That's an obtuse angle. Okay, the next is a straight angle. And you'll see me use this for remembering that it's a straight angle. A lot of times with just numbers or with algebra, we've got a relationship where you're going to be a straight angle measure. And if a student asks me, hey, what's the relationship here? And it's a straight angle relationship, which we'll learn the words for in the next section here. I'll just put my arms out and I'll move my head. And I move my head to represent the angle marking. And they're like, oh, it's a quick tell. Oh, that means it's a straight angle. So you'll see me do that. And sometimes I like to do, I'm 180. I'm 180. But sometimes students remember before I even have to say I'm 180. So it's a visual and an auditory thing to help you remember. So let's draw this. It's probably the easiest to draw a straight angle because it's just a straight line. And to denote the two different sides of the angles, or the two different rays, you're just gonna have a vertex here. So a little point on the line, doesn't have to be in the middle-ish like I drew it, could be anywhere on the line. Looks a little prettier in the middle. And then you have your arc mark. Notice your arc mark is like half of a circle. That's because 180 degrees is half the measure of the angles of a circle. Next we have reflex. Reflex, two different ways to talk about this, similar to how we talked about obtuse. One way is it's greater than 180 degrees, but less than 360. So more than a line, but not all the way around to make a circle. You can also say it's between 180 and 360 degrees. So to draw this, we'll start with one side of our angle and our vertex, and then we're gonna open up more than 180 degrees, but not to a full circle. And we'll draw our arc mark. So notice that's more than half a circle. Next we have the sum of angles. So remember, sum means to add. So you've got two or more angles added together to equal a certain sum. These two sums are 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So a corner or a straight line. Complementary is the vocabulary for when two or more angles add together to equal 90 degrees. So you could have a 30-degree angle and a 60-degree angle. Or you could have a 60-degree angle, a 20-degree angle, and a 10-degree angle. Or you could have even four angles that sum together to make 9 degrees. Still complementary, as long as you're added together to equal 90 degrees. You will typically see this with two angles, but again, it doesn't have to be just two, it's two or more. Let's draw a picture. So let's start with the right angle, and then we're going to draw a ray between the two sides of the original angle. So we're splitting it into two angles. Let's call this angle A and angle B. Let's say that the measure, this little M before the angle and then the A, that's read as the measure of angle A. The measure of angle, let's say it's 30 degrees. And let's say the measure of angle B is 60 degrees. Looks about right. Looks like A is about two A's will make up a B. So there's a representation of complementary angles. However, they do not have to be right next to each other. When you do have angles that are right next to each other, those are called adjacent angles. Adjacent. So adjacent just means beside. You can have A and B split up. So let me show you what that looks like. That's simply A and B not touching each other, not hanging out right next to each other, not sitting beside each other in lunch. They're at different tables. And here we go. There's B. As long as those are the same measures, they still add up to 90. They're still complementary, even though they're not next to each other. And again, it could be more than two angles. Next, we have supplementary. Supplementary is when you sum to 180 degrees. So you're making a straight angle. Whether you're making a straight angle visually by having adjacent angles, or if they're separated and they just sum to 180 degrees. Either way works, supplementary. There is a way that I like to think about differentiating between complementary and supplementary, because a lot of times myself or students get those mixed up. So I think about supplementary goes with a straight angle. So they both start with the letter S. And I also think that complementary comes before S in the alphabet, and complementary goes with the lesser sum value. So complementary goes with 90, which is smaller than 180, which goes with the S, which is later in the alphabet. Let's go ahead and draw a picture for supplementary angles. I'll start with two adjacent angles. So I'll start with my straight angle, and then I'll just draw a ray that's between the two sides of the original angle. Let's call these C and D. And we can say the measure of angle C, let's make it easy, let's say that's 80 degrees. And we can say the measure of angle D is 100 degrees. Okay, so we can break these up again just like what we did with complementary. Here's C. And let's detach it from D. As long as they are still 80 and 100 degrees, 80 plus 100 is still 180, so they're still supplementary. That brings us to our point to ponder here. The angles do not have to be next to each other, meaning adjacent, to be complementary or supplementary, however they can be.